Okay, we are back live. So thank you everyone for your patience. And now we have done the development. So we have to launch the product. So that's why we have now a very important topic, key elements of transition from portfolio selection to launch execution. One of the success factors of being a day one of first to market. And for this, I have my pleasure uh, I have pleasure in introducing the speaker, Reethu Patel, who is Global Product Launch Manager at Sandoz in Germany. She's joining us from Munich today. And Reethu is a Global Launch Manager with Sandoz in Munich. Like I mentioned, she has over a decade of experience in pharmaceutical industry. So over to you, Reethu.
Thank you so much, Samir, for the introduction. So can you hear me? Maybe I have to test that first.
Yeah, absolutely clear.
Very good.
Very nice.
So maybe before we take a deep dive into the topic today, I would like to share some of my reflections and try to connect all of you to this topic, what we're going to discuss in the next half an hour. So I have had chances to work within different functions of a product life cycle, ranging from, let's say, product selection as a global portfolio manager, and in the launch execution phase as a global launch manager, and in the field of market research and competitive intelligence. So what I have observed during, as a part of being this whole cycle, in different functions is there's one element that is hidden but yet very important. And to my experience, I've had quite a few successful launches in the generic world. I've worked both for OTC and generics. So we had a few very good successful launches, but at the same time, we also had some unsuccessful launches where we were not right on time on the market as we had planned. Planning was excellent, but nevertheless, we did not hit the market at the right time. So the factors were plenty, external and internal. And when we kind of took a deeper look at what were the internal reasons, so one of them that, as I mentioned earlier, hidden but very important, was the transition. So we realized how important the transition is. And as I said, I have been a part of different transition phases, as a portfolio manager at some time, as a launch manager at some time, as a part of the commercial team at some time. So I did realize throughout my tenure as within the product life cycle, how important this topic is. Hence my attempt to kind of share my experience today with all of you. And also I would be looking forward to having your thoughts on this and your experience as well. So having said that, my name is Reethu Patel, and as Samir just introduced me, I am working as a global launch manager within Sandoz. So let me share my screen. So I hope the technicalities work.
Yeah, they will.
So I have it here. So I think you should be seeing my screen in a second. Do you see it?
Not yet.
Just give me a hint. Yes, then I would start.
Yeah, not yet. I'll tell you.
Sure, thank you. So while my presentation appears on the screen, I would probably just make a warning to you in case you see a second face on my screen any point of time. Please excuse me, because to be honest, I planned my presentation today from my office and I was prepared for everything, right? And suddenly my son falls sick and I'm forced to stay at home and do my presentation. So this, it was a kind of a test of being agile and flexible, as all of us are used to in this generic world. So I hope you don't have to see my son's face on the screen.
It will actually be a pleasure to seeing your son as well. So
I have prepared him, as a global launch manager, I've planned everything well. Let's hope that I do not have this surprise on the screen. Anyway, meanwhile, do you see my screen? Samir, maybe you can confirm it.
No, not yet. So are you pressing on the this icon with the cross mark, red line on the bottom?
Just give me a second.
You see on the bottom camera for video, microphone, and then the one with a red across line across a TV screen.
Yes, I shared. So let me try again. So
okay.
I am trying to share. So that's a pity if we
yeah, now
cannot.
it comes. Yeah, we can see it. You can
Wonderful.
put it on presentation mode, and we are ready to go.
Wonderful. Let me hide because I saw Baha commenting to someone yesterday to hide the screen. So I got that
No,
point.
no, it's okay.
Baha. So okay, so in the next half an hour, I would be taking you all through, what is this transition that we're all talking about and why is it so important? And what are the key elements that one needs to kind of pay attention to and have a check and keep that in mind. And the third element that I would like to focus today is, so what? I mean, yes, we did talk about the key elements that are important for the transition. So what does it have to say? Are we well equipped and do we have the best practices? So the third element that I just mentioned is capturing all the
So sorry for
experience.
interrupting you. So can you just put it on presentation mode? Just
Yes,
click
I
on
am
it.
right now. I am in
Okay,
the
we are
presentation
seeing.
mode.
Okay, we are seeing a different view. So I think that's the problem. So on the left side, if you can go to second slide, because we're still seeing your title slide right now.
So let me do that again. So now, do you see my agenda?
No, not yet.
So maybe let me do an escape and try to get everyone once again to
Now
the
we
big
see your
screen,
second slide. Yeah.
which is the agenda.
Yeah, correct.
Wonderful. Thank you, Samir. So as I mentioned, the third element, are you well equipped, and the best practices would capture my experiences and my learnings throughout being a part of the transition, as I mentioned, in various different roles as a portfolio manager, as a launch manager, and as a program and project manager, and also being a part of the commercial team as a market researcher and competitive intelligence. Good. So just to give you a quick introduction about myself, I know Samir kind of said a couple of sentences just to supplement what he said and for you to know who is speaking in front of you. I'm Reethu Patel, so I'm basically a dentist who kind of made a huge drift from medical background to the pharma world. So I didn't want it to make a huge drift, so I kind of still stayed connected to the medical world. So after a couple of years of practice, and I'm basically from India, so after a couple of years as a dentist, practicing as a dentist, I decided to move to pharma, and I had a chance to work within a pharmaceutical consulting company, which is called Indogene, for a couple of years within the field of market research and competitive intelligence. And my main focus area was oncology, cardiovascular, and I delivered quite a few projects for Novartis and Bristol Myers Squibb. And right after that tenure, I had a chance to kind of look into the world. That was into Germany. So I moved to Germany as a student again, and I pursued my MBA. And right after my studies, I had a chance to work with Merck for a short stint in internal consulting, which kind of gave me a huge exposure for different cultures, and especially being new to Germany. And right after that, I had a chance to work in a small-sized company called Virvac Pharma, who are in the market for both OTC and generics. So I worked within Virvac Pharma for almost 7 to 8 years in various different roles. I started in market research and competitive intelligence. I was leading the team. And secondly, I moved to the global portfolio management, where I had a chance to kind of start the whole portfolio management right from the scratch. And then I took a year break, the maternity leave, which all women are blessed with. So, and after returning, I had a chance again to work, which was kind of an informed decision to kind of get a feel of the other side of the product life cycle, which was the launch management. So I was kind of, like trying to push the product into the pipeline, but it was a chance to look at what is happening on the other side once you are done with pushing the right product in the pipeline, right? So then I had a chance to kind of get into the global launch management, and that's where I got the essence of the whole launch execution process. And after that, since almost 2 years, I've been associated with Sandoz as a global launch manager. And I'm based in Munich, as Samir just mentioned.
So Ritu, sorry for interrupting you. I think I did not want to interrupt you in the middle of your introduction. So
Sure, no
there's something
problem.
wrong with the slide deck. Not able to see. So what I
Can
suggest,
you go? Mhm.
is it the same deck which you had sent to Y Summit? So I can present it on your behalf. You just tell me and I will move to the next slide. Is that okay?
Sure. I think there were 2 slides that I changed regarding the company, but nevertheless, go ahead, Samir. I think if
So
that's the
you
easier
just
time, let's do it.
stop the screen share, then I'll be able to share the screen.
Sure, not an issue. I'm really sorry for the technical
No,
error.
no, no,
I hope
it's
this is not from my side.
no. Sometimes
Because I
these things
made sure.
happen. Yeah, yesterday one of the speakers, we couldn't even hear her.
I know.
So as you know, this is all. Uh, so can you
All
see the
good.
screen? Yeah, I will
Yes,
put
I
it on
can.
presentation mode. So is it in presentation mode now?
Yes, I see that.
Okay, so this agenda and this was the introduction. So
If you
sorry.
move to the
So
next one, yes.
yeah,
So there is a slight change in the, so if you move to the next slide, please.
yeah.
So there is a slight change in this slide. So I kind of chose 2 different slides from the company. So maybe I would kind of quickly give an introduction to the slide that I had prepared for. You know, the main purpose for me to be associated with Sandoz is we're trying to pioneer the access to patients. And it's incredible the contribution of Sandoz as a company during this COVID, you know, the last year and even in the current situation. So we've been the right partner, you know, negotiating the right prices on the market and making sure the maximum access to the patients. And also a kind of, you know, very proud of our contribution to the market by donating the hydroxychloroquine, which was the need, especially last year in the treatment of the COVID vaccine patients. So maybe we could move on to the next content, Samir. So before I actually start this topic, I wanted to also mention a bit about global launch management within Sandoz. I know this is not the key scope of our presentation today, but nevertheless, I'm just trying to make an attempt to make this whole session very interactive. And trying to kind of, you know, spark a thought in your minds, because this is so crucial for me personally. That is, let me kind of give you a quick introduction of global launch management within Sandoz. So we are associated with integrated project management. That means we are a part of integrated project management. That's how we are placed within the company. And integrated project management is a part of product development. So this is the way we are positioned within the company. And we are a team of around 9 to 10 members who kind of handle the top launches within Sandoz. So our vision is to drive launch excellence and be the role model for a positive cultural change. And our mission is to secure the launch readiness of Sandoz portfolio. So maybe one question that I would probably ask the audience is, could you please share where exactly is global launch management situated or structured within your company? Trust me, this kind of gives kind of, I think, a thought in your mind, because me as a global launch manager, also in my previous company, Viavac Pharma, I have seen global launch management structured within global marketing, and I have seen global launch management also structured under commercial operations. And right now, as I just mentioned, within Sandoz, we are structured under product development. So it would be great to know within your companies, maybe Michelle or some of you, you know, the ones that are in the audience, please kind of just put a post in the chat section to say, where is global launch management located or situated or structured within your company? So having said that, please feel free to share your thoughts on that. So let's take a deep dive into the topic, what we would like to discuss in the next few minutes. So I thought this quote is kind of really connects us to this topic. So very philosophical, I know, life is pleasant, death is peaceful, it's the transition that's troublesome. So I find this really wonderful and apt for the topic that we're going to discuss today. So I have seen, you know, portfolio managers, including myself, saying, I have tried to push, or I have been successful in pushing the right product into the pipeline. You know, I have done the best of my job. And I have seen, depending on it, if it is an in-house project or a business development, if you kind of do an in-licensing project, I have seen people, within these teams saying, I have given my best to find the right partner to, execute this launch or kind of get the product on the market. And then IP and regulatory colleagues saying, I had the right regulatory strategy on place. IP saying, I had the right IP landscape on the table. And then last but not the least, the person who is in the launch execution phase saying, I was the best firefighter that you could hire, and I did all my calculations right, and I got the reality in check. So then I kind of really wondered what went wrong. I mean, we had like excellent speakers yesterday who kind of shared, the strategies, the opportunities and the challenges. Especially Steffi, she showed in the presentation about the market opportunities we have. So I think we all go through that phase, kind of getting a clear strategy, but something goes wrong in between. So then I wonder, what is this? And I think one element that could go wrong, and which shouldn't be going wrong from my experience, from my point of view, because this is something internal which you could fix. And especially in the generic world where time is kind of so critical, and it's money, and it's also about accessing the patients at the right time. I think this is one piece of the product life cycle that you cannot do wrong, which you need to be prepared. So having said that, I would like to move on to the next slide. Samir, if you could navigate. Thank you so much. So transition, what are we talking about? What is this transition all about? I know, as I just posed a question to the audience, where is the global launch management structured within your company, right? So most of us are used to different structure of the launch teams within our companies. So based on how you are structured, the transition can happen from selection to the business development team or to the in-house project development team. So based on make or buy decision, and the transition can happen a major one. I'm stressing more on the major transitions. So the next major transition can also happen from once you strike a deal in case of BD. So you kind of transit from the in-licensing signature deal to the next phase, which is the launch execution phase. So again, and if it is a product development, so the project manager who is involved in the whole drug development, from that phase to the next phase, which is again the launch execution. And yet in the launch execution phase, I have seen two different structures in my tenure, which is one, there was a team which was handling, even in case of Sandoz, we have a team that handles the pre-submission phase, the entire story of BE studies, or, how to make the submission plan strategy and so on. And there is another team which kind of quickly takes the whole package, it's a huge transition if you can imagine. So which takes the huge package from this pre-submission team into the proper launch execution team. So that if you could relate, the time is critical. So there's a lot of information being handled from one team to the other. So let's assume while talking all of this, we have the right strategy in place, right corporate strategy, right launch strategy in place. It's only we're focusing about the transition. So then, if it's in-house, it's the same, right? So then the project development manager or the project manager who's handling the whole drug development gives a transition from the whole analytical part of the drug development from the submission to, again, the launch execution phase, who is kind of being a firefighter and handling the new risks, new surprises, and getting ready to the more reality world, because I personally feel the launch execution is the closest to the reality. Whatever you plan, it's only that crucial time when you kind of really need to act, sometimes perhaps kind of change your plan, in fact. So that's really crucial. And you can imagine what a role the transition plays in such a setup. So not to underestimate this transition, this is the transition that I'm talking about, just to get all of you on the same board. So the next topic is, why is this so important? Yes, the transition does exist. Sorry, Samir, could you please go back to the slide? Thank you. So why is this really so important? So the reason why, all the transitions that I just mentioned, some of the key ones, so important is to mitigate the risk of deviation from common goal. As I said, when we kind of, as a portfolio manager, once you start the clock or the cycle of launching a product by, selecting the right product, as we discussed yesterday so intensively, you have the right strategy, you have the right markets, you have the right product, everything is in place. But are you sure that the same understanding goes through this product life cycle, right from selection to the launch execution, considering the time that, because depending on if it's the early opportunities or the late opportunities, probably you have a time span of, I don't know, like 5 to 6 years, let's say, and also some of the very quick opportunities like quick wins, which is probably you have a time of, I don't know, 1 to 2 years or 2 to 3 years. So that's the reason it's so important to stay focused, stay remained, and understand the common goal. So that's the reason why this is important. Loss of knowledge. As I said, this is kind of a vicious circle. It's the saying, too many cooks spoil the food. So it's maybe we cannot apply directly into the setup that we have in launching a product. More the people, of course, it's better, more the knowledge. But at the same time, we have a risk of losing the knowledge throughout this process of transforming the information from one to another and understanding the whole process. Ambiguity. So trust me, as I've been a part of various different roles, as I mentioned, I have seen a lot of confusion. Everybody is sitting on the place when the transition happens, when the handover happens. There's so much of confusion. I'm sure you share the same opinion from your side as well. So this is something that can often happen, the ambiguity in the teams. Then change in KPIs. So this is also another topic. Probably we could touch on this at the later time on the next couple of slides. Miscalculation of timelines. So I have seen, different people talking about different timelines for one product, so which is so unacceptable. So it sounds very simple, I believe, whatever I've put on this screen. Just give it a thought in your mind. I have seen portfolio manager talking about different timelines, RA manager talking about different timelines, IP manager talking about different timelines, launch execution, who is so close to reality, is kind of talking about different timelines. So just trying to build a base on what I would like to present next, which is probably the key of our topic today. So Sami, could you please navigate to the next one? Thank you. So this is the key elements of transition. If you could, it's a bit animated, Samir, so probably you have to go one by one.
Yeah.
So if you could press yes. So the first one, which is one of my favorites, sounds philosophical.
Just
but
say next whenever you want me to click. Okay.
Thank you. So building trust, transparency, and consistency. As I said, this is one of my most favorites. Sounds very philosophical, but trust me, it's so important in this whole product life cycle. What do I mean with this? So I think Baha is in the audience, who is the portfolio manager within Sandoz. So if I can put it in simple words, I need to trust Baha, saying that he has selected the best product for the company and he's pushed the right product into the pipeline. So this trust is important. And at the same time, I do hope and believe, and I would like to encourage this culture, that Baha equally trusts in me as a launch manager, thinking Reethu has put her best in kind of pulling this launch and trying to be on the market on time as planned. So this trust is so important between the functions. Not to forget, we are all working on a common goal, which is getting one product on the market on the right time, be it day one or first to market. And the next two elements are transparency and consistency. So again, I would like to elaborate these two topics more intensively in the best practices. So transparency and consistency is something that I have, as I said, I have worked both in a smaller setup like Vervac Pharma, which was previously, and also a Sandoz, which is kind of a huge ocean. So transparency and consistency has been a challenge in both the setups, be it a smaller company or a bigger company. People still strive to understand the information that is flown from one department to another. So transparency and consistency is crucial. Next, please. realization and implementation of the common goal. So maybe we could also touch upon this topic when we get into the panel discussion mode, because I have a wonderful question there. What is the role of global launch manager or portfolio management or project manager? I do believe that all of us who are kind of, I name them as CEOs of the launch, I mean, whichever phase you're leading. So I think it's the utmost task that we have as a lead in various different cycles is to integrate the common goal that we have for this particular launch, the launch strategy. Why it's so important to understand, why are we launching this product? Why are we getting this product on the market? Until and unless you do not sync this, it's hard to move on to the next cycle. Next, please. Challenge and adaptive required. So again, coming from the global launch management perspective, I know there has been a lot that has happened before the project comes to you, to your bucket, but nevertheless, do not stop yourself from challenging. And I have to mention one of the statements that is so kind of deep imbibed in my head. This was so often said by the CEO of the company that I worked before. He says always, like a successful launch is important, but he said avoiding an unsuccessful launch, to avoid the losses through this unsuccessful launch is equally important to him. And I think it's so important. I mean, as a CEO of the company, he has the right thought in mind, and I do have this thought in my mind, and I think that's the reason to associate that with challenge. So it's not really late. So do challenge, because you need to get your facts right in every phase of the transit, be it from portfolio to BD or PD, or from BD to PD to launch execution. Next, please. Get the numbers right. So this is again the financials, and I think Michelle also mentioned in one of his comments, I guess, yesterday in the chat section, that the business case, especially in the selection phase, depending on your company structure and policies, most of the time it's kind of a top-down. So it's so important that we kind of associate that top-down gradually doing a reality check to the local entities, that's getting closer to the countries. That's when you start getting the feel of the numbers and how the countries react to their business case, right? So it's so important, and especially being in the global launch position, in the launch execution phase, I think you have the advantage of the reality, and plus, chance to adapt in case you get the numbers right from the beginning. Next, please. Keep them in the loop. It's transit and not exit. So this is also one of my favorites, I would say, especially because I've worked as a portfolio manager and as a launch manager. I have seen functions just leaving after doing a transition. That means, as an example, once I select, or let's take an example of business development, which is in licensing. So I have seen right after, this deal is signed, people saying, okay, I have done my job. It's next the launch execution team to kind of make it a success. That's so not true. I think we should stop that and encourage a culture of still being in the loop, and still we are a team. Maybe you have transferred the lead from yourself to another function, but nevertheless, it's so important to remain in the program and remain in the cycle and be till the end, because you are a part of the cycle that you have started. Next, please. So I'm being a bit worried about the time as well. So let me, at the same time, I don't want to miss any important part. So do a reality check. As I said, maybe we could also elaborate more in the next part of my presentation on the reality check piece. So next one, please, Samir. So the last one that I had was being vigilant. So understand the calculated or foreseen risks and mitigation plans. I know we always have risk mitigation plans and throughout the cycle, but nevertheless, I think it's so important to kind of recheck if it's really real, if it is something applicable and doable, and to make sure that there is a right trigger button behind every risk management plan. So as I said in the beginning, let's make this session more interactive. So please share anything else, that you would like to share and contribute. Let's all get an advantage of this topic. Maybe there's something else that I haven't seen myself. It would be great learning for me as well and for the rest of the audience, I guess. So I would definitely encourage and appreciate your contribution to this key elements of transition. Having said that, I would move probably to my next slide, Samir. Thank you. So the last part of my presentation, not trying to not take much of your time in the networking break. I will definitely join you again in the panel discussion as well, and we can also have a lot of questions and discussion and conversation there. So the last part of the presentation was, are you well equipped? What are the best practices? So some of the key elements that I mentioned, the question comes, so what? So what do we do about it? So next, please. One source of truth, master data. So this is something probably also related to the IT aspect of the whole, the organization. So as I said, both at Virvac Pharma and Sandoz, this one thing that we have, a big challenge is the one source of truth. So it's so important that we kind of have one system that talks to the entire functions that are involved in the launch cycle. So when I say one source of truth, you have all the information right from the project management, right from the IP information, right from the regulatory strategy, and most importantly, the supply chain setup, the risk management area, and last but not the least, the forecasting system, all in one place, and they talk to each other internally, and also that all of us as the different functions within the product launch cycle understand this master data, and we are all referring to one source of truth, because reporting is also another vital aspect of the whole product launch, because I'm sure we all have a setup in our own companies where we kind of report the right escalations, the right status of the project, but most often we miss one source of truth, that we are all referring to one point of source. So next one, Samir, please. Install frequent checkpoints and steering boards, revisit the assumptions and planning frequently. So again, out of my experience, I have seen different structures while reporting the launches, while checking the status of the launches. At Virvac Pharma, we did not have that many steering boards. Of course, they kind of developed it eventually, but I think this is such a big plus for all of us to, especially the ones in crucial phases of the product launch cycle, to see and expose and get everybody on the same line. So the checkpoints and steering boards are truly crucial to get support from different functions, be it from IP or be it from supply chain. Next, please. Robust internal process and RACI structures. I think Michel, while he presented one of his last slides, the lessons learned, the last point that I saw in his presentation was the RACI structures. I think we truly underestimate this particular part, although I think most of the organizations kind of extensively spend their time and resources in working on the RACI structures. But trust me, sometimes, especially in a huge organization with a huge employee turnover, there can be a risk of loss of knowledge. So the RACIs, the right RACIs in place, the right internal process in place, does really help in such transitions where you can avoid ambiguity, you can at least understand the right roles and responsibilities of people. Next, please, Samir. So start early. This is also one of my favorites, and which I learned as a global launch manager. Start early. So plan the right transition processes and the timeline. So there is, I would talk more elaborately during the panel discussion as well. So when do I actually start, in the launch execution phase? Is there a particular timing? I know all of us are used to different practices, but I would say the earlier, the better, because you have understand your baby really well, and you are prepared for the risks that can come up, and you are also at the same time prepared for the new surprises. So try to start early in the chain, as early, as much as possible. Next, please. Scenario planning. So most of us who are or have been a part of the business case and still being a part of the business case planning know this. Never miss the best, base, and worst case. I have really found this very important in all the different stages of the product launch. to have all the three scenarios so that it kind of gives you a flexibility and adaptability and different cases, because you have your numbers right in front of you as a best case and the worst case. So do not miss this point at any point of time, especially during the transition phase. Next, please. Realistic mitigation plans and with timelines. I have seen, sorry for being brutally honest, but I have seen, wonderful slides when I have seen the product launch strategy, showing the mitigation plans and timelines looks wonderful, kind of gives a secured feeling for the managing board. But I often ask two questions when I see the risk mitigation plan. Is this something realistic? Or is this something being put for the slide? B, when do we have the trigger plan? That means, do we know when do I press the button for this mitigation plan? So these two, I think, are crucial for the realistic mitigation plans, and make sure to trigger and challenge these questions during transition. Last but not the least, I have, Samir, if you could go to the next one, high-performing team. So I know it's kind of very generic, but I couldn't resist myself in mentioning this element in this slide, because I think this is truly, truly crucial for people understand what is this process about, and kind of get that integrity in the team, and have the right leads that kind of perform the whole launch performance. So having said that, if you could move to the next slide, Samir. So I would like to conclude by saying this is a huge momentum. We as a part, I know we are different people from different backgrounds here, but each one of us contributing to the product launch. So I would say, there's somebody who's creating the momentum in the beginning. So relating this to the transition, make sure this momentum is not lost during the transition phase. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. And I hope I can talk more and discuss more with you and have an open conversation also in the panel discussion, because I think we're running out of time. We just have 15 minutes for the networking break, but let's catch up later on in the panel discussion. And I think Baha and Stephanie, who are my colleagues within Sandoz, also have a lot to contribute to this topic. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much, Reethu, for a very insightful presentation based on your personal real-time experiences. So that's what is important in this PPM summit. So no issues with respect to time. We have networking break. There are few comments in the chat box as part questions, but I suggest that we take those questions when we reconvene, because we'll have almost an hour to discuss, to have the panel discussion first with 3 of you and then 2 others joining. So we will have that interesting conversation. So
my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you again very much. It was very nice. So what we will do now is we will now take the so-called networking break, and please stay online because Simona will join us to give you an update on that. And for the 3 panel members, I request them to join backstage just 4 or 5 minutes before 11. So thank you again, Reethu. See you later.
My pleasure. Thank you, Samir.
Thank you. You can disconnect now, Reethu.
Sure.
So ready for backstage? Over to you, Simona.
Hello, Samir. Thank you for giving me the word. I'd like to invite everybody to join the networking break. What we can do is to either join the sessions. This is a very short break, but you will still have 15 minutes to discuss with other experts who join topics such as regulatory challenges or other kinds of challenges or opportunities, up to your decision. So you can go to sessions to join the roundtables, or you can opt for speed networking. There you'll be connected randomly to another participant, and you'll have 20 to 180 seconds, or like up to 3 minutes to introduce yourself, chit-chat a bit, and then later on you can connect on LinkedIn or on our new PPM workout platform. It's a community platform that aims to provide a space for deeper discussion on the topics, and it's also a place where all the recordings from this conference will be posted. You can learn a bit more about PPM workout in the expo session. And if you've got any questions surrounding that, or you'd like to get a demonstration before you decide to join, then feel free to email me. I'll pin my email in the chat box. So thank you so much. And thank you, Samir.
If I may quickly say that I found the platform very, very interesting, and I would urge all the PPM community members to join it as a new community. It's, I think, a very interesting idea by, they have not paid me for saying this, but I'm still saying this because I find it very good. So I will encourage you to try it out and join it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samir. You worked hard on making it happen. It's like social media platform for PPM professionals. So it's very niche oriented. It provides plenty of opportunities for discussion through content. You can share pictures, videos, articles, links, files, anything. You can post questions and it will create the graphics for you. So it's very engaging for others to even interact with those questions. There are specialized channels, groups, different topics to follow, and yeah, a lot of wonderful and helpful tools and features. So we're excited to have you there, and I'll see you later.